Hello and welcome to The Stack. This week I welcome back Daytona Williams from Neptune Papers. We uncover a new music magazine and a digital publishing company that make publications user-friendly online. Enjoy the show. From Midori House in London, this is The Stack, 30 minutes of print industry analysis, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We start the show in Paris, welcoming back to the show Daytona Williams from Neptune Papers magazine. We spoke when he launched the title in 2021. The magazine has a strong following and they just published issue 8, featuring a stunning cover with Julianne Moore wearing Bottega Veneta. Daytona has an eye for amazing interior design and interesting conversations. Here is more from Daytona.
I feel the way that the magazine has evolved the most is, to be honest, I feel way more confident in what I'm doing. I feel like when we first spoke, I had just received the first issue from the printers. I kind of had no idea what I was doing, to be honest. I'm not sure if I know now what I'm doing, but I definitely feel more confident. And I think that now, after 4 years and 8 issues, it's like, I also know what people respond well to, what people like, and even just engaging in these different conversations with whether it's talent or retailers or people who read the magazine. It's really given me the kind of the self-confidence to know, like, okay, I know I'm doing something right. I know I'm on the right path, which is ultimately the best feeling.
What I like about Neptune, especially reading issue 8, of course, there's always beautiful design, beautiful interviews, but there's something quite warm about it. I mean, whatever feature you're doing, you feel like you're visiting someone's homes and getting a lot of inspiration. Is that perhaps what you wanted with your magazine, the personal touch?
Yeah, I'm very happy that comes across. So I always want the magazine to feel quite optimistic. I know that that's kind of a cheesy word to use, but I always want the magazine to feel optimistic and warm and welcoming. I think that I grew up a lot with my grandparents, and I think that when I'm doing a story, I want my friends to be able to think it's cool, but I also want my grandma to be able to read it and not feel as though she's on the outside looking in, I feel like you can definitely approach intellectual subjects with maybe a more democratic vocabulary and still be smart and intriguing and engaging. I think that we're in a time where culture and interior specifically is definitely opening up to the world. And I feel as though that's great. The more people who can enjoy beautiful things and interesting conversations and interesting features, I think that's great. The more the merrier, I don't believe in this thing of kind of this like ivory tower of elitism, of intellectual thoughts. I think that democratic and optimism is the best.
Everyone deserves to see as well, and perhaps to own a few pieces of The Apartment of Nunn Swede, which is an incredible story in the magazine. I wonder if you can tell us a bit more. For me, it was very, very inspirational. One of the most beautiful apartments I've seen.
Yeah, me too, to be honest. It's one of my favorite stories that we've shot. So the apartment was recently redecorated by a Persian interior designer called Kazem Naderi. And Kazem had picked up a copy of the magazine in Paris maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And then he came to an event that we did in New York. We chatted and we kind of stayed in touch. And then I was in New York in November to launch our fall issue, which was a USA special issue. So we did an event in New York and then in LA, then in New York. And when I was there, Kazem said to me, come and see this project I'm finishing. I think you'll like it. And if you like it, we could shoot it for Neptune. So not only did I like it, I loved the project. I walked in, it's a beautiful apartment overlooking the park. And really so the apartment is obviously itself beautiful. What really sold me on the project was, so Nan Swid herself, who's the lady of the house. Nan used to have in the 80s and 90s a company called Swid Powell, where basically she invited artists, architects, and interior designers to create tableware, and that was mass produced. So it's, again, this idea of bringing kind of culture and elitism to the masses, which I think is great. We went to New York in February to shoot Julianne Moore for the cover, and then the next day we shot that project. So it was the best week ever, you could say.
And Julianne Moore, there was such an interesting profile of her as well, because even in your editor's letter, she was like, I want to talk about design, let's not talk about film. That's very Neptune in a way, right?
Yeah. And I mean, Julianne, again, it happens super organically. I'm definitely someone like, I really believe in destiny and I believe in gut feelings. I believe in vibes, whether it's a good vibe or a bad vibe. And Julianne, basically how it happened is she ordered a copy of the magazine online on my website a few months ago. And even that for me, I thought that was super cool already. And then a couple of months later, I was having dinner with some friends of mine here in Paris. They live in New York. And they were saying, oh, who's like your dream story? Who would you love to shoot? And I said, oh, well, Julianne Moore just ordered a copy. I'd love to do something with her. And that was on the Friday. And on the Tuesday, they went back to New York and one of them messaged me saying, I just had lunch with Julianne. She pulled the magazine out of her bag. She's obsessed with it. So I just reached out to Julianne basically, and it happened organically. And Julianne's someone obviously that everyone knows and loves, but I wanted to do her in a way that didn't feel too celebrity. And even the conversation, I feel as though since she was promoting her film with Pedro Almodovar these past few months, there has been a lot of press. So how do you approach a subject that everybody knows in a different way, And I think that not a lot of people know that Julianne has a real passion for design. So I thought that the interesting approach, along with Christina Holloway, who's the great writer who wrote the profile, let's talk more about interiors, set design. Also, Julianne, someone who grew up moving a lot. So how does that then impact your sense of space and your sense of home? There's this thing of, I think, with celebrities, where you always feel as though they're on the other side of the fence. And it was really just a way of like breaking that fence down and creating a conversation that was actually kind of, the way I see it, quite intimate and quite psychoanalytical. This thing of Julianne's relationship to space through her parents and her past. I thought it was a quite interesting way to treat it.
And I want to talk about some of the physical changes in the magazine. Some of the format have changed as well throughout the editions. Yeah. This one is very nice. It's a great size. It's not too small, not too big.
Yeah, so the thought behind that. So basically the first issue, I actually just made a mistake when I calculated the size. That's really why, for people who don't know, the first issue was 5 centimeters taller. But also the paper, now what I love about this is that there's an almost rubbery effect to the cover, which I think when you hold it in your hand, it feels very comfortable. I love this format because I thought that it's slightly smaller than an A4. So my thought was, when you stack it on a table, Neptune will always be near the top or always be on top. I think Apartamento is a bit smaller, but otherwise most magazines are bigger. But I just think it's a very, again, friendly size to hold in your hand. I think it's friendly. To be honest, I'm holding one in my hands now. I just love having it in my hands. I think it's the texture and the shape, I think, is great.
Yeah, there is a certain softness to the cover as well.
Yeah.
May I say buttery?
Exactly, buttery, the word of the moment.
I love this word.
Yeah, butter is the color of the moment. But no, buttery, there definitely is. There's something where I feel like it feels when you hold it as though it's not going to slip out. It feels safe in a way. I don't know how to describe it.
Oh, I love this kind of descriptions. And Daytona, you are based in Paris, but you are originally from the UK, right?
Yeah, so I'm from the UK, based in Paris, splitting my time in between Paris and the US. The US is actually the biggest market for the magazine. The US is 85% of our audience.
85, that's impressive.
85, yeah. So basically, when I started the magazine, I was thinking, do I do it in French and be a big fish in a small pond, or do it in English, which one for me is more instinctive, but do it in English and be a small fish in a giant pond, So I thought that straight away I did it in English, targeting the US as a market from the get-go, because in a previous life, in a previous career, I was in charge of women's wear buying for a department store here in Paris. And I always knew that there's not that much money in France. France is obviously a rich country, but the French audience does not consume product in the same way that an American audience does, and there's less disposable income. So my plan was always the US. And then even that was then when we would do sponsored posts on Instagram, always targeting New York and LA. We've really worked at that. And then our fall issue, which came out last October, we actually did a USA special issue. So in the wake of the elections, I kind of wanted to do an issue that highlighted just great American talent in a way that is unexpected and fun and cool. Like, I think that historically, American talent has been quite snubbed by European press, definitely by the French, who think that they invented the wheel and everything else since then. So I thought it's cool to be a European-based magazine and really shine a light on great American talent, So that also then helped us secure the American market. We did a great dinner in LA with J. Crew. We did a great cocktail in New York with Troy Birch. Now we're actually going to New York next week to do 2 events also, to do a dinner in partnership with Baccarat. And we just did an event in Salone also in Milan. Now a big part of publishing, the reality is obviously you have the income from sales, from ads, but events are now a big part of that income stream, and it's also, you can't really create a magazine without animating it. I feel now with with social media and with Instagram, you kind of always have to be one step ahead and always not only posting, but animating and doing projects. And especially when you're a magazine that comes out twice a year, you have a 6-month gap in between those 2 issues. What are you doing and how are you animating? I think
to be present and not just online, right?
Completely, because I feel like also with Instagram, okay, there's billions of people on Instagram, but to go out there and reach them organically without just doing sponsored, you have to then also build a community around the magazine, who will then speak about it to their community. It's kind of that ripple down effect. So you have one job is doing the magazine, and the other job is communicating about it. It's really, both are just as important as another, because you can have great content, but if no one sees it, what's that expression? If a tree falls down in a forest and no one hears it, does it really fall down or something? That's kind of what it is. You can have great content, but if no one sees it, do you have great content?
Thank you very much, Daytona. Issue 8 of Neptune Papers is out now. For more, go to neptune-papers.com. And as you know, listeners, I'm always so delighted when there is a new music magazine around. This time it comes from the team behind sports title Pitch. Their first venture in the world of music is a celebration of 50 years of Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen. It's a special collector's edition. It was a pleasure to speak with Andy Efford, editor of the title and founder of Stencil Agency.
We launched issue 12 a few years ago now, must be 3 years ago now. It was always the idea of do sport and then do pitch stories of modern music, mixed stories of modern TV. That was the whole sort of plan, but it's just, editorial's hard, especially when it's not just the sole focus of your business, when it's just part of what your business is, and it just takes so much time. So I get drawn back to it, which isn't, I've got other stuff to do as well.
Because you have an agency as well, right?
We're a creative agency, and that's what we do. And we came, Sam and I, who's the creative director in the business, came out of print, and the first thing we said when we had a creative agency, we've got to get out of print. It's so difficult, it's so this, it's so that, and we still do a good amount of it now. And and here we are, and the Springsteen issue. And the worst thing about this as well, we'd had an editorial meeting that published a guy called Kevin Whitchurch, who's done everything. He's a 442 publisher, and he's done everything at Haymarket. I'd gone into an editorial meeting where we were talking about doing the music magazine. I'd got it in my head. I was going to tell them why we can't do it, why it's not good, why we're not going to do it. And we sit down there, and Kevin came up. He said, "Well, what about a one shot, sort of thing like that? But focus on an artist and things like that. They're doing well on the newsstand." And before I could stop myself saying it, I said, "I think Born to Run's 50 years old next year." And I thought, oh no, I've gone in there with the idea of putting a line,
rejecting
doing it like that, and I've come, there's the idea for us to do it. So, and here we are. It's the first issue of the music magazine, and it's a Springsteen special.
And what's the plan for the magazine? Here, of course, is a beautiful. I mean, if you're a Bruce Springsteen fan, you must have it. It is a beautiful cover. I want to talk to you about the cover in a bit, but is it going to be kind of specials about artists, or are you planning kind of a more general magazine, music magazine for the upcoming issues?
The original plan sort of was, and we've got magazines are done well feel sectional. You know where you are as a reader in the front section. You know where you are in the feature well, and you know where you are in the back section. And they're all dictated to whether you're a monthly or a quarterly or whatever, what they might look like. So through doing quite a few of the pitch sport magazines, we've got a good idea of what it feels like. And we've got a nice the illustrated style we've ended up with. We've got so many talented young people in our business that can contribute so much in the art and love being part of it. Again, that's annoying as well, because they love being part of it. We sink so many hours in producing it because they love doing it. We had that illustrated style that's really, really labour intensive and the likes. So we ended up thinking, well, it's 130 pages. There's 100 pages on Springsteen. There's 30 general, just to give a feel of a more, and it's sort of, and I think it's an easy access read sort of thing as well around it. So it's ended up with a bit of a house style for us, really, and I think it works really, really well. I'm really proud of it. I know the team's really, really proud of it, and here we are.
Let's talk about the cover, black and white, but there's a big Springsteen in yellow. I love yellow on magazine covers.
Of course you do.
Look at Monocle.
Of course you do.
We always have yellow on the covers. But, black and white is not always common, perhaps even for the first issue, right?
No, you're exactly right. It's the opposite of common. It's I don't make the rules about these sort of things, but black and white covers tend not to sell as well as full cover colours and all those sort of things. So with my professional publishing head on, I'm thinking all the reasons why we shouldn't have that, but it's just such a captivating cover. We thought, bugger it, we'll go. We go with this. It's just a great image of that period of Springsteen's career when he was, emerging into the foothills of the artist he was going to go on and become. So I'm really, really proud of it. I'm a massive Springsteen fan as well, which, that makes it even more cursed. There's even more you feel you can contribute to it. But it was worth doing, if not straightforward.
And funnily enough, it does relate, I think, to your main title as well, Pitch, because there's something quite encyclopedic about it, both titles, which I quite like, and they're quite unique in those worlds, I would say, in a sports magazine and a music magazine.
Yeah, and the commonality of the word was what attracted us to the idea that it might be this, and it might be film and TV, sort of thing like that. And we thought that was quite
That's the next one.
Yeah, well,
are you promising anything, Andy?
Don't say that. So and that was the attraction to it, and we couldn't think of a title that did that, sort of thing that ran it across the different subject areas. And we just tried to make the commonality and the common element of it all is the quality and the overarching sort of style. And we think we could do it. You're talking to the same sort of people that are interested in records, are interested in sport, those sort of things like that. And more than anything, they're interested in magazines. And that's the common thing that brings them all together. There's that sense of whether it's a train journey where you've got a monthly title and you're going to read it all in that journey, or it's a quarterly like ours and you're going to sit down with it and it's going to stay on the coffee table and it's going to be a thing. That's why I thought it might work. We'll see.
And there is a market for it, right? I mean, you're going to issue 12 of Pitch. So tell us, was it a surprise? Because of course, when you launch, there's so many questions, but clearly, I think it's almost like an easier start a new magazine now that you have one that is so established?
A bit. It is. And the best thing about it all has been us having such a young team doing it. It's been so exciting for them to do it because, the world's digital. And again, it's hilarious to see them how they work. They see the work in it. The first thing they do is take the photo of it. So they turn it back. But they love the fact that it's committed to print. Everybody finds it really exacting. It's a different benchmark with print compared to digital. You can rub it out in digital, but when it's on the page, it's on the page, and it's a bit of a monument. And there's nothing prouder for me. This sounds a bit glib. You get the letter from the British Library to send your copy to the British Library and think, well, you don't get that with building a website or something like that to know it's going to go in the National Archive.
It's early days, but are you already thinking of perhaps the next music icon on the cover?
Don't you dare. Don't you dare.
No, you don't need to give me an answer, but are you thinking? I'm sure you are thinking.
Yeah, we're kicking it around.
Do you accept requests?
Well, look at them all. One of the things that came out of it, I do a talk at the local part of the university, and I'll go in and I'll say, the whole thing is I'll tell them everything I know about magazines in an hour. So that's my life. So 20 years I'll condense for them in an hour so they don't have to learn it. And I'll finish off at the end of it with music magazine covers, you have to tell me which are the top 10 sellers, artists, sort of thing, from the top 10 biggest seller to the biggest seller. And I'll go through this sort of thing like that. And I'll start off, and I've got no idea that, young people, sort of thing like that, they'll say Taylor Swift or something like that. The first one turns over. It'll be something like Joni Mitchell, say. And they'll look gone out, and they'll say, well, incredible looking woman, incredible artist, incredible body of work, interesting life, all these sort of things. Then that makes it people that like her, love her, and that's why you motivate them to buy a magazine. So okay, and we go through this, and then the next it'll be who's next, no idea. So I'll turn it over, and it will be Kate Bush saying, I'll say, incredible looking person, interesting body of work, and by the time we get to number 6, number 7, along this sort of thing, they know it's interesting first. It'll be Prince, and then it'll be this, and then it'll be this, and then it'll be the Beatles at the end. Incredible looking people, incredible body of work, and interesting story, and all those sort of things. So there is a well to be part of that, but only if we feel we can add something new and modern and passing it forward, because there's a lot been written about that, and we've got to feel that we can put a spin on it. And I think, if you look at how we've handled the stuff, I think that's fresh and a vibrancy. You see a lot of and it's not particular. I'm not denigrating why to do it, but it can be really, really heavily archived, and all the features feel exactly the same, and they're all archived stuff. This is all freshly written stuff, and it's not from.
It's easy to read. It's current. It's, as I said, encyclopedic.
Thank you.
In a very nice way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're proud of it.
Thank you very much, Andy. And you can get hold of your copy of their Springsteen magazine on pitch-mag.co.uk. And finally on the show, let's find out more about Exact Editions, a digital publishing company that turns publications into more dynamic and user-friendly digital editions. Among its clients are London Review of Books, Pop, New Statesman, and many others. A pleasure to speak with Jake Thompson, their account and marketing manager.
Exact Editions, we provide a digital platform for magazine publishers. So with Exact Editions, all the archived issues are available on the platform for subscribers to access, and the user experience is based exactly of what the print edition would be like. So going through the pages, all visual elements are retained. It has the functionality and puts the magazine content first. There are no pop-ups, no ads. It's just a kind of pure experience of what the magazine would be like. I think many remark it's the closest digital equivalent to reading a print title.
And I love the fact that it's kind of a replica, because I think I spoke to a lot of kind of publishers in the past. Sometimes that's what actually the reader want. Sometimes maybe the person cannot buy like a print copy or whatever. Maybe it's in a different country, but they want to have the same experience, the same order of articles. And I think that's what you find out, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think sometimes simplest is best. This magazine publisher spends so much time putting together an issue. It's worth having a digital equivalent that respects that and reflects that. And you're right, in regions where print might not be accessible, publishers are struggling with postage and printing costs. It can be a quite nice way to get that print copy kind of seen without actually having to print it. It's a digital replica. And the archive experience is really important. So not only do you get the latest issue, but you get all the back issues with that subscription. So it's kind of looking into the past and the future with one subscription.
So how does it work? So if I'm a publisher of a magazine of whatever subject, then I get in touch with you guys. Do you kind of help out, that process? Because some magazines have huge archives. I was looking at your website, magazines like The Spectator, for example.
Exactly. No, we do help with publishers. So some publishers, unfortunately, can't have the complete archive. Sometimes issues are lost. Sometimes they're inaccessible, and that's a real shame. So that would be a kind of limited window of back issues. But we help where we can, and we can sort of facilitate scanning on behalf of the publisher. We recently worked with Autocar, and we have the complete archive, which goes back to, I believe, 1879, I think 1880. And that has every issue of the magazine on the platform, so people can access all of the content there, and obviously new issues as they're uploaded. So we can help the publishers and work with them. And then from that, when we have that content on board, we can sell subscriptions and also provide the publisher with the tools to facilitate the digital fulfillment themselves.
What surprised me, browsing through your website is that the variety of magazines you have. It's like the stack in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, you have fashion, you have smaller titles, niche titles, or perhaps something bigger, weekly magazines. So tell us about the success. I mean, because it's been almost 20 years that Exact Editions...
Yes, that's correct. So it's 20 years next year. And you're right, it's a real wide array of titles. I think it can go from the very specialist, niche, maybe hobby titles to more kind of mass market publications. I think it fits a wide variety and we can kind of work on all levels with publishers. Our services, we have several of them. So we can make it fit with what the publisher's looking for. If they want to sell to libraries, we can work with them on that. So many you mentioned The Spectator earlier, the Times Literary Supplement and the London Review of Books. Those are just some examples where we work quite closely in providing digital subscriptions to libraries on their behalf. But then when you have titles that are a bit more perhaps consumer facing, then we'll work on just providing archive access to their members or their subscribers. So it's a range that we can pick and choose and make sure it works for the publisher.
And even the search, button, sometimes you're interested in reading something from, an issue from 3 months ago. That's not practically impossible to find. So maybe that's where Exact Editions could be useful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having the ability to quite easily look through any issue that is uploaded on the site is another tool. And it allows publishers to kind of recycle content. And, producing content can be, so expensive. And when it's produced, you don't want it to feel like it's just gone. It's just created there. You can recycle it and the audience can kind of keep on consuming it for a long time.
What about geographically? You're based here in the UK. I presume that's your biggest market. But are you open to expand to different countries, to different, to France, to the US or whatever?
Yeah, I think publisher-wise, we're mostly European, but actually audience-wise, we're probably mainly based in the US. That's due to the library subscriptions we have there. We work with, thousands of libraries across the world, and obviously a large proportion of those are in America. We have incredibly close ties with librarians and the institutions there. So America's a big market, but we're looking more and more to expand maybe towards Asia and kind of explore that region because we have a few titles we'd like to kind of broaden our horizons really and get as many a kind of global suite of titles on the platform.
I wonder, as I said, if you have many clients, many publishers, many magazines, but I wonder if you could tell us some of the more recent ones that you really appreciated, that they are now part of the Exact Editions world.
Newsweek recently brought their international edition, and I think that's a nice step towards more American magazines. The London Review of Books were the first magazine that actually joined the platform. At some point along the way, they kind of went and did their own thing, but they've actually come back recently and we're working with them on a renewed effort. And I love that magazine, so it's great to work with them. I think a lot of the appeal for publishers is how we can monetize archived content and ensure that back issues can kind of have an afterlife and actually drive revenue beyond their publication date, years beyond their publication date, decades even.
I think it's key because some magazines, you mentioned hobby magazines, cars. I mean, let's be honest, the content will not age necessarily. So I think there is a market there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, talking about the library market, which is something we've really worked towards in the last few years, they prefer digital resources and they desire digital resources. There's only so much space in a library and they want that kind of accessibility for students, and having the archive there rather than just new issues is so appealing and so important. They're open to paying high subscription fees for that. It's a very exciting market for publishers with this archive content.
And now a bit of a silly question. So let's say if you buy an edition on Exact Editions, is there different formats? Which type of electronic device do you think people will be reading? On their iPhones, iPads, or perhaps something slightly bigger?
I think a mix. I think, we support obviously an online platform, but we do have an app as well, which supports our subscriptions. I think it's a mix of both. We often find people like to go cross-platform, so they have it on their phone, but also their iPad and computer. We kind of support that. And I think it's important, the digital experience is reflected on mobile device as well as laptop. So it's the same principle of just having a precise digital replica of the print magazine with all the archive content available. So the principle remains the same, cross-platform.
Thank you so much, Jake. And listeners of The Stack can visit publisher.exacteditions.com to create a free digital edition and learn more. And feel free to email Jake at jake.thompson@exacteditions.com for more. And that's it for this week's show. My thanks as ever to our editor Jack Juras. Any comments or queries, feel free to write to me, Fernando, at fb@monocle.com. And remember, we're back next Saturday at 10 a.m. London time. Meanwhile, you can always listen again at monocle.com. You've been listening to The Stack. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.